Is there a quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh? Well, after the story from the Post-Gazette with Gerry Dulac breaking it that he had multiple sources say that Diontae Johnson challenged Mitch Trubisky at the halftime of the Jets game, and shortly after was when Kenny Pickett was announced to be the starter. There's a lot of questions about what's going on there, and especially with Kenny Pickett being having a concussion in the game where the Steelers beat the Buccaneers, and Mitch Trubisky coming in and helping win the game with the touchdown pass and closing it out at the end. There's a lot of questions about the quarterback position. We'll do that and talk about all our Week 6 grades right here on Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button in this video. If you enjoyed, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs, the most comfortable shorts, pants, and sweatpants with built-in liners. Go to birddogs.com, use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, Locked On, and boom, you'll get a free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dogs. But guys, we got to get into the big talk right now. And it is obviously, we're back to square one where we were when all of this stuff started. Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky. And again, as I said before, I have nothing against Mitch Trubisky. I have nothing against anybody. All I do is evaluate and say who I think should get the start in these situations. But before we even dive into that, we do have to talk about my colleague at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Gerry Dulac, who's been on the beat forever. There's very few guys that have the extensive knowledge that he does of the Steelers in the world. So, this guy, when he gives a report, even if you disagree with it, you got to hear him out. And he says there's multiple sources telling the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that during the Jets game, if you haven't read this story, go to the post-gazette.com and read it right now. But during the Jets game at halftime, Diontae Johnson challenged Mitch Trubisky and started yelling at him to say, "Throw me the football more," even though Johnson had to drop a pass in that game that resulted in an interception. Also didn't get the toe tap in the end zone another time. And you could argue that if he gets that toe tap, Mitch Trubisky never has to leave the game in that situation. And supposedly Trubisky stood up to him and snapped back at him. And there was a heated exchange. And it was said that after that was when Kenny Pickett was told he would start the second half. Now, here's the thing about this. There's a few things that I think that just should be parsed out in this story. We don't know when exactly, we don't know if Kenny Pickett was going to be the starter anyways. And if that was just part of something that happened there, we don't have all the details of the timeline of that. Because I think the assumption that's being made by a lot of people is that, there was a fight and then Kenny was just thrown in because of the fight. I mean, it wasn't looking great at the time. You weren't seeing synergy. And you saw when Kenny Pickett went out there, the Steelers built a 10-point lead. He led 2 touchdown drives. It wasn't like it wasn't without merit to put him in the game in that situation to get something going. But I mean, there was clear discord. I mean, and we saw it not just from Diontae Johnson, but George Pickens with his visible frustration with a lot of members on the team at the time. And again, that's not to say that they hate Mitch. They were just getting frustrated. And frustration builds when you're losing. And when you're losing, and certain guys are being the ones that are consistently making mistakes, and you're not voicing your opinion because you're trying to be a good teammate, which I think is what was happening at the time. But now let's fast forward. And Mitch Trubisky had a very good game that we will talk about in our grade segment. And you'll see where I did with our Stars and Skulls segment and where I put him. But Mitch Trubisky came in for Kenny Pickett, who Kenny Pickett led the Steelers' first opening touchdown drive in God knows how long, but then wasn't able to get another touchdown. And then in the middle of the second half, takes a really rough shot. Well, not a really rough shot. He takes a shot and then is said to be concussed. He goes into the locker room, doesn't come back out. Mitch Trubisky has to go back out there. Mitch Trubisky comes out firing 9 of 12, 144 passing yards, a touchdown with a 142.4 passer rating. Also ran for a 9-yard gain that was really important at the end there. And in the fourth quarter, when they really needed it, he led an 8-play, 71-yard drive that ate 3 minutes and 43 seconds off the clock for a touchdown pass, and threw the first touchdown pass of the to a wide receiver this season. And then when he got the ball back with up 2, needing to grind out 4 minutes and 38 seconds, he did just that with the offense. And it wasn't just him. Najee Harris helped, and Chase Claypool helped a lot as well. But 10 plays, 46 yards, and he was able to get some of that on the ground. You got to give Mitch respect for that. Now, here's what I will say. And I said, if you remember, I said this all off season long. The reason that they're keeping Mason Rudolph is because none of these guys are cemented in as a starter. And they're put in there. The depth chart is that, sure. Like Mitch Trubisky, he was the starter at the start of the season, but none of them have Ben Roethlisberger powers. Ben Roethlisberger could throw 5 interceptions against the Jaguars. You were never going to pull him unless you were protecting him from injury or something like that. But the real task here, I think that the Steelers, always knew was coming, was that if someone's playing poorly or not showing symmetry, you know what? You can switch another guy in there and just see what you got. And for those who think, well, you can't win football games like that, well, first of all, they just did. And second of all, the last time the Broncos won a Super Bowl, that's what they were doing with Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler. And not that that's the model of success and consistency that you want all the time, but sometimes you got to survive that way. And you can survive that way. Especially when that's all you got in a situation. And you want Kenny Pickett to develop. But I'll say this. I think if Kenny Pickett is 100% cleared by all doctors and it's just like, hey, he's great, he's good to go. Okay, yeah, put him back in and see what happens. But if I'm Mike Tomlin and he has the reputation of standing up for his players and taking safety before anything else, and Kenny Pickett was actually concussed in that last game, you don't rush that. They didn't rush Pat Freiermuth back when he was concussed with the last game. And I think that you protect Kenny Pickett, and this is why you kept Mason Rudolph. This is why you signed Mitch Trubisky. Was if this situation happened, which we thought it might with this offensive line, and lo and behold, here's Kenny Pickett getting hurt. You've got 2 veterans on your roster. Mitch Trubisky can start again against the Dolphins. And if he goes down, you got Mason Rudolph. That's why I said all offseason, I don't think they should trade him, because I think he's actually worth something here. Because something like this, I thought, was bound to happen with the way that these quarterbacks play and the way the offensive line plays. All that being said, I think that what the Steelers need to do right now, and what I think they will do, is they're going to take every precaution with Kenny Pickett, and they're going to be comfortable with Mitch Trubisky. And again, we went on Monday's show. I showed you guys Chase Claypool in the locker room talking about how, when Mitch went back out there was a lot of familiarity, stuff that carried over from before. And we'll get to more assessment of how they specifically played in this game. Like, now that I've looked at the all 22 and been able to grade stuff, and when I do my grades, we'll go over all that. But it's clear to me like that there's things that both quarterbacks can give you. And sometimes it just might depend who has the freshest eyes, who's seeing the field the best on that day, and who's understanding the assignment and having the better connection with their receivers. It's that simple. Now, again, I'm not with the locker room situation. Gerry Dulac, I look up to that guy. I used to read Gerry Dulac's predictions in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette when I was a little kid, when I was just going through and seeing who he picked, and I would always try to compare my picks to his. So, like, I have a lot of respect for Gerry Dulac and the stories that he reports. I'm not so sure that Kenny Pickett was named the starting quarterback at halftime, or the top quarterback at halftime, because of that conversation or because of that yelling match that they got into. But I also think that there's a good chance that something like that happened. Tempers flare on football teams that are struggling. But I don't think that's going to stop the Steelers from making any decisions now. I think that what the Steelers are going to look at and say, hey, you know what? Is Kenny Pickett healthy? If he's legitimately healthy and there's no questions and we're not rushing this thing, give him another shot. See what happens. But Mitch knows to be ready. And I think that Steelers fans, if you're sitting there saying either way, I think that you need to look at it and try to be objective, like I'm saying to be. Because if you were a person that thought that Mitch Trubisky stunk, and listen, if you were saying objectively, I think you were correct on a lot of those days. There were a lot of times he was the problem with the offense, but he was not a problem. He was the asset of the offense this past Sunday. And if you want to be fair, if you want to be objective, you have to acknowledge that. But we'll talk about player hate in a little bit, because we're going to start off our grades with a not great grade, but also some of the things that came with, this player earning that not great grade, but not earning some of the things that were being said to them. If you're keeping up on Steelers news, you know what I'm talking about, but we'll get to it there, and you'll get my thoughts on that in just a minute, along with all of our grades from the Week 6 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But first, we have to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at Bird Dogs. Now, as I said about Bird Dogs earlier, they're an amazing clothing company that has high quality pants, shorts, joggers, and all sorts of great options to wear as we get further into fall and closer to winter. I'm a big fan of their sweatpants because they're super comfortable and they're the perfect thing to wear at home when I'm going over game film. And again, they got a liner in, so it's like it feels perfect. It feels nice, and it helps me get cozy right at home. But they also have plenty for me to wear when I go out. They have high quality golf pants that you can wear out. I was at PNC Park at doing the Stadium Links event over the weekend, and got to hit some golf balls all across PNC Park. That was fun as we looked out on downtown. But they also have joggers that I wear when I'm trying to work out. So they have a lot of high quality stuff, and their stuff is higher quality than Lululemon, but still costs $20 less. This is why you got to go get yourself some Bird Dogs. They also have shorts for all those people who like to wear shorts when it's cold, but y'all are weird because I don't do that. Go to birddogs.com, enter promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, and they'll throw in a free Bird Dogs rope hat right at birddog.com. Again, that's birddog.com. Promo code Locked On, and boom, you get a free Bird Dogs rope hat with your pair of Bird Dog sweatpants, golf pants, joggers, and or shorts. These are the most comfortable pants with built-in liners. You will not take these things off, I promise you. So do go get yourself some Bird Dogs. We're also brought to you by LinkedIn. Now, y'all know about LinkedIn. They're the number one place to go find a new job. But if you're the employer trying to find new employees, they're also the number one place for you to go find them. Because as you're gearing up for the rest of the fall, you're looking for some new places to hire, and LinkedIn Jobs is the best place to do it. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs that will reach out to not just your network, but far beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then all you have to do is add your job, add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, and then that'll spread the word that you're hiring so that your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, back to the case at hand. Remember, when we do back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Again, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's talk about these grades. Now, I said I'm going to start off with the bad grade because we did have a 3-sculler. This is our second week in a row of having a 3-sculler, and this is the second time of the season that we've had this 3-sculler, and it's Kevin Dotson. He had an abysmal day out there in the field. I don't think this. Oh, by the way, excuse me. I need to back up for those who don't know the grades because you might be new to the show, but we do grades differently here. We don't do A, B, C, D. That's boring. I came with with my own rubric. It's stars and skulls. Stars are good. Skulls are bad. 3 stars means you got an elite performance. 2 stars, you had a great play with a good day. 1 star means you had a good play with a good/decent day. 1 skull means you got a bad play without much of a redemption, but not a terrible game. 2 skulls mean you had a pretty bad game. 3 skull means like that was all-time terrible. So as you can see, 3 skulls, Kevin Dotson, and there's no hiding it. And, I saw him in the locker room after the game. He knew it. Like you could see that look on his face that he knew that he had a bad game, and he felt terrible because he knew that he let the guy go that hit Kenny Pickett that took him out of the game. And he also said that he talked to Kenny Pickett and apologized to him. And Kenny Pickett said, like, dude, I forgive you. We're teammates. It's all right. And that's what Kenny Pickett does. But but it's again, Kevin Dotson earned this. He had 2 holding calls. One of those holding calls wiped out a big passing play to Diontae Johnson. In fact, that was the play that Kenny Pickett got hurt on. That big play might have sparked something in the second half to get going, and it got wiped out. He also had a holding call that messed up a potential touchdown drive. He also had a false start that set the Steelers back, and he really didn't have much of a great blocking day to redeem that. Otherwise, there were some good run blocks he had, but all in all, it was still rough. But I want to say this, and I'm pulling myself back on camera on YouTube here to say this. Kevin Dotson revealed that after the game, he was getting death threats from Steelers fans, and this is where I gotta say, people take this stuff way too seriously, and you need to not be those people. And if you're watching my show or listening to my show and you're one of those people that sends death threats and crazy things to players because they messed up in games, you need to get a life. You need to get out. You need to stop being this terrible person. I said this on Steeler Nation Radio when I was just talking about Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky and how people talked about either one if they didn't like him. Because there's people that like Mitch Trubisky that hate Kenny Pickett, and people that like Kenny Pickett that hate Mitch Trubisky. Your job ain't to hate people, man. If you think that they're not the person for the job, it's fine to say that, but making it beyond that, talking about their personhood, talking about them as human beings, that's where I draw the line. If you want to say, hey, I don't think Kevin Dotson's a good lineman, I think that they should go find somebody next year or find somebody in free agency right now or start Kendrick Green. If you think any of those things, that's totally fine. Those are football opinions. But when y'all start going crazy and sending this stuff to him, and I'm not saying I'm a professional athlete, but I've had death threats on me. That stuff ain't fun. That stuff ain't cool. And people think that's funny and they can do whatever they want, and they do it behind, fake usernames on Twitter and stuff like that. Y'all are some lames. Y'all are some losers. The people who do that, y'all suck. And I'm not saying that's all Steelers fans, because I know it's not. I know many Steelers fans, and y'all are great. Met a lot of y'all at Acrisure Stadium on Sunday. Shout out to all those people who hit me up, including my boy Andy. But I gotta say, it's disappointing to hear that, but not surprising, because I've seen some of that come from me as well. I hope Kevin Dotson doesn't let this get to him too much, but I also hope that people understand that this stuff can sometimes be taken seriously. So, that being said, it doesn't erase the fact that he had a really terrible game, but a terrible game does not get you that. So, that's the last I'll say on that. We'll go back to the rest of the grades, but I had to voice my opinion there. We didn't have any 2 skull grades, but we did have a good group of 1 skull grades. And 1 skull means, again, like, this wasn't a terrible game for these guys, but it was like, they could have been better. Montravius Adams, it's another time that he's landed himself in the skull category, just not making the difference there. They brought him up to kind of like take over the spot for Tyson Alualu, who also was on this list because he wasn't that good. They still didn't improve. Now, I will say Chris Wormley did. I won't say what grade I gave him, because I think you got to leave some suspense out there. But these two guys, they weren't doing enough for me when I saw them on the defensive line. I'll also say on the offensive line, the tackles, I thought they struggled in this game. And granted, the Buccaneers have a tough defensive front, but Dan Moore Jr., Chukwuma Okorafor, I thought weren't the assets that I thought that they could be. I think Chukwuma Okorafor, he gave up a sack in this game. I'll also say Zach Gentry, I feel bad because Zach, I think, did a heck of a job the last game, and he didn't get really much of a chance to show off his receiving skills in this game, but he still needs to show off his blocking skills, and there were some inconsistencies there at best. So I give him that. But again, not terrible, not irredeemable, just like just need to work on some things. The other guy I put on this list is Presley Harvin. I'm made well aware by several of our listeners that I often forget to put special teams in this, and I'm sorry. It's tough because there's a lot of these things, and I'm trying to put this all together. But I'm trying to do that more. And I will say Presley Harvin, he started off with 2 great punts, 50 yards and beyond, but he had the next 3 that weren't good, and he dropped that average down to like 44. Still needs him to be sharper. He's too inconsistent, and there's times he can have some boomers, but he's got to find a way to boom consistently. And I think that this will be they have him under contract for 2 more years after this, but this might be the last year that Danny Smith and the Steelers are, trust him to be the guy without bringing in some real competition that could take him out in training camp. But he's got to find it. We'll see if he does. So there's all your skull grades, but we still got to talk about star grades, because there's a lot to talk about there that's in the positive level of what happened in this game. And I think Steelers fans, you're gonna like hearing some of those things. I'll say this. I'll tease this much. Both quarterbacks made it, but who got more stars? We'll talk about that on the Locked On Steelers podcast in just a minute. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our sponsor over at Prize Picks. Now, y'all know about Prize Picks. If you don't, you better get on it, because Prize Picks is the fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now. It's simple and easy. All you do is you pick 2 to 5 players that you think you have a beat on for their day and how fantasy then they're going to play. Then you look at the certain stats that have been posted by Prize Picks, where, say, if you had Chase Claypool getting, if they listed Chase Claypool as getting 80 yards in this game, all you have to do is pick more or less. And if you picked more for this past game for Chase Claypool, you would have won that bet. And you string that along with, again, 2 to 5 players and put in different picks like that, and you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry on Prize Picks. And you're not competing against a million other people. You're not in a pool of all these people that you got to beat. All you got to do is beat the projections by Prize Picks. It's just about guessing right on more or less picks. Prize Picks also does this for the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, college sports, and so much more. So download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Again, that's promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON, at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100 when you go to Prize Picks or visit the Prize Picks app. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We are continuing, or I guess finishing up our Week 6 grades here. And this one's going to be a bit heavier because there was a lot of good contributions here. We're going to start with the 1-star guys. And I got to brace myself because there's a lot of them. Here we go. 1-star guys in week 6. I'll start off with Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett does deserve 1 star because I thought that he was still very judicious with his throws. There were times I thought he made mistakes. And the reason he doesn't get more stars, he only had 1 touchdown drive. But that first touchdown drive, he understood where he had to go. He was picking at him. But you could see all throughout the game. And this is, again, why I think it's no problem with him taking a seat at sometimes this year. But there were times that you could see he wasn't making the same decisions or the same good decisions that we saw him make the first week and a half or so that he was with the Steelers. And it's because when the game's coming at you this fast, and if you're a player that lives in the details, that works to be great in the details, and that's who Kenny Pickett is, you're going to start to gloss over details when you're playing in so many games. And I think that's what happened in this game. There were some of those passes that were incomplete to the sideline that Kenny Pickett threw, where he didn't recognize who was getting pressed and who wasn't, and that in failing to identify that guy, targeted the wrong side of the field on a few occasions, and that led to some unfortunate plays. But those unfortunate plays never led to turnovers. He still threw his first touchdown pass at Acrisure Stadium, and the Steelers still got a win. So I give him a star there. Other guys that got stars, George Pickens, because I thought he still made some good catches. Najee Harris, I thought he had some strong runs. I still say, for those people that think that Najee Harris isn't running, isn't a good running back, I think that y'all are crazy. The Steelers' offensive line isn't giving him much space, and people still don't fear this passing game that much, so they're keying on him to stop him. Even so, caught a touchdown. It was huge in those last 2 drives to make things happen. I'll also give the offensive line some love because I thought Mason Cole did a really good job at the center position. He was handling his business, giving space, not being the mistake. Now, I will say that he could have had 2 stars if he didn't have that snap that messed up Mitch Trubisky in the 4th quarter. But I still think he had a good game. Connor Hayward, you got to give him a shout out for some of the big plays he made in this game. Had a really big catch and run in the 4th quarter that set up that touchdown pass to Chase Claypool from Mitch Trubisky. But Connor Hayward, two of 3 catches for 49 yards. Not bad for the rookie. I'll also throw a lot of the secondary in here. James Pierre and Josh Jackson especially, because they were not picked at nearly as much as I thought they were. Now, I will say, when it comes to Josh Jackson, he did allow 3 catches on 4 targets his way for 33 yards. So it wasn't like spectacular, but when you're the guy that was brought in off practice squad and you weren't picked on by Tom Brady all day, you did a good job. But who did an even better job, in my opinion, was definitely James Pierre. He was targeted 7 times in this game, only allowed 3 catches for 23 yards. And even though he wasn't registered with a pass breakup, he broke up a pass. I still don't understand how that was happening. But Tom Brady had a 51.5 passer rating when throwing in the direction of James Pierre. So shout out to him. I thought that he played a heck of a game. I thought that Josh Jackson played a heck of a game. Also shout out to Malik Reed. And we'll get to this more too with Alex Highsmith, but Malik Reed didn't make a ton of plays in this game. Like if you go and you look at the stat sheet, Malik Reed, he has 5 tackles. So, I mean, he did make a play there, and he had a breakup. But I thought the best things that Malik Reed did was he played the edge well. He turned people back to the inside well, and he was helping in the run defense. That was a lot better this game. So I give Malik Reed that, and that's his first time that he's been in the star category this season. I'll also give a shout out to Robert Spillane. I know that he got picked out a couple times in with pass plays, but there was also a big touchdown that he broke up that I thought he was in position for. And I urge you to go watch the all 22 film and watch some of the plays where Tom Brady had to hold on to the ball. And notice the part of the field that he was looking at when he was holding on to the ball and what made him go to his second or third read. And oftentimes he wanted to go after Robert Spillane, but Spillane was in too good of coverage for Tom Brady to feel comfortable to fit the window into. Now, it didn't always happen, especially when he got deep down the field, but when it was close to the line of scrimmage, Spillane was in good position. And again, the guy had a really nice breakup. He also had 5 tackles. I do give him a star in this situation. I also give a star to Steven Sims and Chris Boswell. Sims, of course, with the kick return. If he scored a touchdown, he might have got two stars, doggone it. But still, really good return. Showed the extra step, and he's proven. He's proven. Hey, I should have been the starter all along. Chris Boswell. What else needs to be said? Made the 50-yard kick with the doink and made it work. Trey Norwood and Arthur Mollett. Not spectacular days, but they held down the fort. And in a day where the secondary was missing three top cornerbacks and their best safety in Minkah Fitzpatrick, those guys stood up in big ways to help kind of lead the group and get James Pierre, Josh Jackson, and Elijah Riley, all those guys that they just threw in the back of the secondary. They were able to kind of keep the peace there. But let's get to the 2-star grades. Now, I will say there are no 3-star grades in this game. So this is it. I felt that no one had the truly elite performance that we're talking about when we look at that. But I will tell you, there were some guys out there that got 2 stars. And I think this is the most 2 stars I've ever issued in the game. I want to start with Mitch Trubisky because, again, 9 of 12, 144 yards in that limited sample size. He made several big plays when he was put behind the sticks and through no fault of his own sometimes. The bad snap that Mason Cole had when he snapped that bad, I was like, well, the Steelers about to just have to punt here. Tom Brady's going to get the ball back. He's going to get inside field goal range. He's going to run all the clock out, and then they're going to kick a field goal, and then the Steelers are going to lose. I just saw it happening in my head. But no, Mitch Trubisky went out, converted several third downs down the stretch, stood in there, handled it professionally. And I think you saw him trust his eyes a bit more in this game. And I think there was a perfect example of this on the touchdown. Because I think the touchdown was actually a really good call on the part of Matt Canada. In fact, both touchdown passes were in this game. But when they got in the red zone, the Buccaneers went into a cover 3 zone, and Antoine Winfield was playing down in the slot. So he kind of had a job as the safety. He couldn't commit to being deep. He had to play the flat and underneath to kind of account for that part of the field. So what happened on that part of the field, if you go back and you watch that play and you see it was Chase Claypool and George Pickens kind of lined up next to each other, Chase Claypool hit the seam while George Pickens ran it deep. So if you understand what a cover 3 is, if Winfield's the guy going to the flat and there's no other person coming back to help, the cover 3 means there's a deep safety in the middle and there's a corner who's patrolling the sideline. And so what happened was the corner patrolling the sideline had to stick with George Pickens because he ran a deeper route. And then nobody ran with Claypool because he ran up the seam, which is the weakness of the cover 3. And Claypool stopped, I thought, just deep enough to get past Antoine Winfield so that Mitch Trubisky wouldn't risk him tipping it. And he sat there. It was a perfect read, perfect throw, perfect timing. And it was a great exclamation point end to your drive. So shout out to Mitch Trubisky. I thought he did a lot of smart things in this game. Granted, again, limited sample size, but he earned this grade. Other guys that get this, Alex Highsmith. Again, Alex Highsmith didn't pop up all over the stat sheet, only had that one sack officially as a tackle, but he also had a breakup. That sack was a forced fumble. But again, I say with Malik Reed, because here's the thing, Malik Reed had more tackles in this game, but Alex Highsmith did a lot of the dirty work in this game. When the Buccaneers wanted to run his way, he was plugging up guys. He was getting in guys' faces. He was taking on blockers, and he was making sure that the off-ball linebackers were free, which is why both Devin Bush and Myles Jack got 2-star grades in this game. I went back and I looked. Myles Jack, I knew immediately just looking at the game. The guy had a big breakup on a potential touchdown. He had 8 tackles, second most in the game. I looked at that and I said, okay, Myles Jack, I get you. Like you're doing this. But I had to go back and look because, Devin Bush, it wasn't as loud with his success. But when you look at it, 5 tackles, had the breakup in the end zone of the 2-point conversion. Some of those tackles were really good run stuffs that don't get talked about. And he looked like the Devin Bush of 2019 when he first got to Pittsburgh. So that's a very good sign. Other guys that got 2 stars here, Terrell Edmunds led the team with 10 tackles, had a tackle for loss, was coming up, helping against the run, helping against the pass. And ultimately, I do think that Terrell Edmunds had this was one of his best games, just like Devin Bush, I think, had one of his best games. Terrell Edmunds wasn't even targeted in this game. I think that speaks to his volumes about his performance. Other guys that got 2 stars, you got to give it to the interior defensive linemen who were getting after it. Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi. Hayward, of course, had a sack in this game. Ogunjobi, a big TFL against Leonard Fournette and in the red zone. Big-time plays from big-time players there. But all day long, they got after Tom Brady. They disrupted the pocket. They said, hey, if you think that you got time to think about something, you don't. You actually don't. We're going to come up the middle. We're going to control the situation, and we're going to try to bring the run defense with us. So big shout out to them. But my last guy on the list here with 2 stars that you cannot deny is Chase Claypool. Now, I did have somebody in the YouTube comment section say, hey, is Chase Claypool going to be 3-star? The only thing that stops that is that he didn't have more touchdowns, and he didn't have like an obscene amount of yards. He did catch all 7 of his targets for 96 yards and a touchdown. And in that space, that's a great job. You did a great job, great day. But up, for 3 stars, we're talking about the ultimate uplifting type of performances where Antonio Brown used to go for like 150 and 3 touchdowns, or even 2 touchdowns, that kind of stuff. I think that kind of stuff, it gets you going for the 3 stars. But Chase Claypool's still a 2-star player in this game. The back shoulder catch that he had on the 3rd down with Mitch Trubisky running to the sideline and firing to him was one of the best catches I've ever seen this guy make. And if he can continue to build on it, I think Chase Claypool could end up being a special wide receiver for the Steelers. It was a special win for the Steelers. I'll say that much, which is why there were so many guys on the 2 stars and the 1-star lists, and not as many guys this week on all the different skulls lists. So we hope that you enjoyed the grading segment of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow for the Wednesday edition. I'll be talking about Mike Tomlin's comments at the Tuesday presser that he made. We'll be breaking that down, getting you ready for the rest of the week, and also talking more about your Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, find the Locked On Steelers podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday content, as well as our bonus content when we get time to release it. Thanks again for checking us out. Back on your screens and in your ears very soon.